Hi, Helena.
Hi, Adam.
And hi to all of our listeners. We've got a really interesting episode for you today with speech pathologist Samantha U'Ren. But before we introduce Samantha, Helena, why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Helena Dix. I'm an opera singer who likes to cause mischief and sing many high notes on stages all around the world. I'm a foodie, a dog lover, and it could be said that I do love to laugh, but we're not doing too much laughing in today's episode because today is a very interesting and informative episode. But tell us about you.
My name is Adam Miller. I'm a former opera singer turned producer, writer and director. And Helena, you and I have had the great pleasure of working together over the years, and we've had a fair few laughs as well. So, in this episode, we've got Samantha U'Ren, who is a wonderful speech pathologist, and we've both worked with her as a singer. Samantha has over 25 years of experience in vocal coaching and more than 18 years in clinical voice therapy. She's the founder of In Good Voice, a practice that specialises in voice therapy, vocal health education, and singing lessons for professional voice users such as singers, teachers, and public speakers. Her singing credits span both classical and music theatre styles, and she's performed professionally in Australia, London, and New York. Now, we pick up the conversation while we're discussing our various fitness regimes. If that sounds interesting to you, or if you'd like to hear Samantha's insights into vocal health, listen on. I cannot bring myself to run. It feels pointless. I spend a lot of time going, I'm not running from anyone. I'm not running towards anything. I'm just running. And I resent that. There's a little part of me that feels like I could be doing something better with my time. So with a rowing machine, at least I can put on a television show and go, I'm just watching something that I want to watch. And this is great. So I binge watch.
Wait, hang on a minute. But if you were on a treadmill, you could watch something as well. So that's still running.
Yeah, but a treadmill. No, I'm not doing a treadmill. Treadmill is even worse than going for a regular run.
You could have someone standing behind the treadmill so it feels like you're running away from someone, like someone that you don't like. Could I pay you just to stand behind the treadmill?
You know, I went to the Kylie Minogue concert in February and I caught the tram up, got on the wrong tram, was in heels, had to walk through the MCG car park in the dark. There was nobody around. I was so scared because I was late for the concert. There was no one around. I was in heels and all I kept thinking is if someone tries to grab me, I'm stuffed. I can't run, especially in heels. So I'm just going to have to use my self-defense and I'll just do what Helena does. I'll just scream. I'll sing a really high note really loud in their face.
That's what you do.
This is great advice. This is the advice that everyone needs for life, is that just do what Helena does and sing a high note.
You joke about that, Adam, but like singing a high note when someone was following me did actually save me from that person following me late at night in London. So.
I know. Yeah, I know this story. In fact, we're recording. Why don't you tell us that story?
Why not? So when I first moved to London, it was late at night. We were doing a student house event. I was walking home on my own. My friends decided to stay at the bar. It was about 1 a.m. It's a pretty safe area as well. So it wasn't, I wasn't too scared about walking home on my own. But a guy was following me and he had, like a hood on, and I would stop, he would stop, but he would always keep quite a distance away from me. But it was very obvious that he was following me. And in my head, I just thought, Helena, you're going to need to run. And I thought, well, that's going to end badly. I can't run. He'll catch me. And then I thought, what do I do? Do I confront him? And I thought, no, that might not end well either. What's my best weapon of self-defense? It's the fact that I'm loud. Like, that's the best weapon of self-defense.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, if you're walking the streets, I sound so ghetto. If you're like walking the streets at 1 a.m. and you scream, a lot of people these days wouldn't want to know about it. They wouldn't want to help people. They would be worried about themselves, really. And people would be, maybe looking out their windows, but I don't think that they'd want to help you. If you sing an operatic high C at 1 a.m.
Or a whole aria.
Yeah, or a whole aria. But just the high note, people are curious about what's going on. So I thought, well, that's my best. So I stopped dead on. I turned and faced him, sang my high note, but on the words, fuck you, but as high as I can, landing on the top C. And people started to turn their lights on, down on the street that International Student House was on, just behind the academy there. And all these lights started to go. And he stopped and he looked so shocked. And then he giggled and he ran as quickly as he could the other way. And I thought I was so badass. Like, I went to college the next day to the academy telling everyone that I'm like the superhero because of my high notes, because it got me out of trouble. He may not have wanted my money or my breasts or whatever the hell he wanted. But to be fair, either way, it ended fantastically. And I was so proud of myself.
He knew who you were. He wanted a free performance.
And even if you didn't, he got one, and hopefully he's listening today.
But little did he know that I was famous because my very first operatic duet was with our special guest, Samantha, today.
Are you serious?
Yes, it was a special moment.
Yeah, Sam and I were duet partners at Opera in the Market.
Nuns.
We were nuns. I mean, it's very appropriate. So that was like, I think my first like really serious duet, and Sam was my duet partner. So that's how far we go back. We go back a long, long way to the Opera in the Alps and Opera in the Market with Opera Scholars Australia. We were the first crew, weren't we, Sam?
Yeah, they were the good old days. That feels like a lifetime ago.
Well, it was really, but such wonderful, wonderful times. Sam, when you had your journey as a singer and then went into being a speech pathologist, what was the decision? Like, what came for you to do that?
I kind of always wanted to be a doctor, to be honest.
Wow, that's cool.
But I didn't think I was smart enough. And I was also pretty, not great with blood.
That would, yeah.
It's going to be tricky to be a doctor. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously I had this dream of being a singer, did my Bachelor of Music and loved that. But I don't know, I think the turning point for me really was that I just wanted to know more about the voice. It just wasn't enough being a singer. And it's kind of ironic. I used to lose my voice all the time.
Oh, wow.
I used to always get laryngitis. I was very prone to losing my voice and I hated it. And I wanted to always know, how do I stop losing my voice? What do I do? And I was interested in speech pathology. And I worked for quite a bit, in the industry doing performing, but then I don't know, I kind of just felt like it wasn't enough. And I knew how hard it was to have a full-time career as a singer. And I kind of initially thought, I'll just do it as a backup. Well, it's ended up not being a backup.
Yeah.
And I think I can remember the pivotal point for me where I already was a speech pathologist and I was living overseas in the UK, working as a speech pathologist, auditioning for roles in operas, not really getting any of the roles because I was working full-time as a speech pathologist, so I was a bit limited with when I could work.
Yeah.
And I can remember being in New York, just doing a bit of a holiday and reading Renee Fleming's autobiography. And I can remember the pivotal moment reading her autobiography where she said that she is away from her children and her family 10 months of the year. And I knew that I always wanted to be a mum. And I just thought, I'm not willing to sacrifice not being with my children or my family. And I think at that point, I thought, no, I'm going to really pursue the speech pathology, voice therapy thing and just make the singing fit around that so that I can do both.
So tell us about doing both. So you obviously still sing. What was that singing journey for you?
Well, I mean, I guess I started when I was 12. I started playing piano when I was 6. My grandmother, Beryl U'Ren, was a very well-known piano teacher around the Ringwood area. She taught everybody. I still meet people who say, I knew a lady called Beryl U'Ren. She was a piano teacher. I'm like, yes, that was my grandmother. Oh, she taught me when I was a kid. So I always had that music, upbringing. And then I started high school and they were doing a production of The Sound of Music. And I was quite little and they needed someone to play Gretel. Of course, as we all have mentors and wonderful teachers that helped us along the way. Jan Lee, Russell Kaur at Maroondah Secondary College. They got me to come and audition. And I just remember having to sing my name and a part of Do, Re, Mi. And next thing I knew, I had this part of Gretel in The Sound of Music. Well, the piano got pushed to the side because suddenly I'd found my love. And during those performances, Kevin Casey, who ended up being my singing teacher for something like 12 years, approached me and said, you've got a lovely natural voice. I'd really like to teach you. So he had a conversation with my parents. And then from there on, I started singing, toured with Chime Choir and was a soloist in Chime Choir. We went to Japan. Some of the best times of my life singing in all these amazing places around the world.
Oh, yeah.
Having part of the culture and meeting people. And I'm still really good friends with a lot of the people that I met in that choir. We went to Canada as well. And I was, singing solos at places like Lake Louise and Banff Springs Hotel, and just amazing. So, yeah, and I started out doing music theatre. So obviously I did the Sound of Music. And then we did things like Guys and Dolls at school, Oklahoma, Bye Bye Birdie, which wasn't my favourite. When you're in year 12, you have to wait until the senior years to get those lead roles.
So who were you in Bye Bye Birdie?
I was Kim McAfee.
Oh, fantastic.
And everyone thought it was really funny because I was very late developer. And she was singing the song How Lovely to Be a Woman. So it was quite apt. And then I did my Bachelor of Music, and that's when I really started moving into opera. And I have to say, music theatre has always been my passion, but my voice just suited opera. So that's where I shifted towards. I did my first opera with Opera Australia when I was 14.
Oh, wow.
I was in the children's chorus of Werther.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry.
Sorry. Yes, it was quite an intense opera. I think it takes about an hour to die, doesn't it?
Oh, it feels like an hour to die while you're watching it as well.
Actually, I do recall one performance. Maestro Cilario, was that his name? He was conducting, and there were people in the audience laughing. He stopped the whole show and turned around and basically told them to shut up or leave.
Wow.
Everyone was just on stage like, oh.
What? Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was crazy. No one messed with him.
That's true.
I love that. And so, you had this journey that went through, and then you made that decision to go on and be a speech pathologist. Did it take a lot of research training? Like what was the kind of process that involved for you to become a speech pathologist?
Well, I have to say that speech pathology degree, apart from childbirth, that was probably the hardest thing I've done in my life.
And you've sung through Werther, so, you've done some hard stuff.
Yeah, look, it's not an easy course. And I do get a lot of singers messaging me saying, oh, look, I'm looking into doing speech pathology. What advice would you give? And my advice is, if you're doing it to become a voice therapist, then don't do it, because it's such a small portion of the course. I did the undergrad course, which was 4 years full time. And I think we did 1 semester on voice.
Wow.
It's a lot of anatomy and physiology, a lot of child development, a lot of linguistics, research methods. Then when you get into 3rd and 4th year, there's lots of neuroscience, learning about all the cranial nerves, and then all the dysphagia, which is all the swallowing disorders. So, speech pathologists, we're very smart. And it's a very complex area, and we all kind of specialise into our fields. But it is very hard to break into voice. And, Debbie Fireland has been my mentor, and I just have looked up to her and been inspired by her for so many years. And, she's really helped me along the way.
In fact, I think that Debbie Fireland was my speech pathologist when I was a singer.
There you go. I think she's been everybody's speech pathologist, mine too.
Yeah.
Are there a lot of people who study speech pathology who come at it from where you've come at it, or are you quite a unique person as far as that goes from the vocal side of things?
I think there's more now, as people are seeing it's harder to have a singing career. They kind of want to do things other than teaching singing. I think I got in quite early. I've been doing it for a long time, and really the thing that helped me the most was I fell on my feet when I got to London, and I fell straight into a voice job where I was the voice therapist across 3 hospitals in London. I was working with Tom and Sarah Harris at the time. They were one of the leading voice teams in London, and they just took me under their wing. And, I was watching Tom doing vocal cord surgery.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah. And he'd freak me out because I'd be in there watching, and it's microsurgery, and he'd say to me, oh, do you think I've taken enough there? And I'm like, don't ask me, I'm not the surgeon.
And you had your eyes closed because there was blood.
No, not really. I mean, it's microsurgery. It's pretty good. I can tell you, though, that moment when I actually saw vocal cords with my naked eye, because you're always looking at them on a camera.
Yeah.
They're always magnified on a camera because, of course,
Of course.
the average larynx for female, the vocal cords are about the size of a 10-cent piece. It's very, very small. But the patient was prepped on the table. The anaesthetist had been in and put her under, and her head was way back, and you could see right down and actually see her vocal cords. And I got so excited.
Clearly the right job for you then.
Oh, I get very excited about the vocal cords. You know, people just look at me and go, "You're weird," because, you know, of course, the elephant in the room, we all know what they look like.
And my mother went to ENT for the first time, and I kind of hadn't prepped her what the vocal cords look like. And my mother is not the most subtle human in the world. And they put the camera on and they turn around and said, "Okay, here, this is what they look like." And her eyes just grew and grew. She looked at me and she went to open her mouth, and I went, "Don't." I just said, she's like, "Helena, that looks like a vibrating." I went, "Don't."
A lot of people say they look like an alien.
There we go. There we go. It looks like an alien. We like that.
We'll go with that.
So, Sam, how has your understanding of vocal health changed how you approach performance now?
I mean, I used to be pretty bad. I think when we're younger, we think we're invincible. And I used to thrash my voice around a bit. You know, I'm a mad Essendon supporter. It's been a hard 20 years. But when I was younger, I used to go to the football every weekend and scream and barrack until I was hoarse. Like, there's just no way I'd do that now. And I think, you know, having more understanding of my voice, and I'll be honest, I have had some voice disorders. I've had a couple of things happen, and, you know, mechanics, cars break down too, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So since that's happened, you know, I've had to be careful with my voice, and I know what my limitations are now. And I think as we get older, the reality is things change and things don't work as well as they used to. And I'm probably not doing as much practice now as I used to because I'm so busy being a speech pathologist. I mean, it's in some ways it's good, but in other ways I was learning from Ros Illing for a while, and she used to say to me, "Oh, will you just stop being a speech pathologist and be a singer?" Because I think once you know too much, you start thinking, the thyroid arytenoid's doing this and the vocalis muscle's doing that. And sometimes you just start thinking anatomically a bit too much instead of just singing.
I've actually always wondered that, because one of the things that I thought about when we were having you on today was the fact that when you do your undergraduate or even your postgraduate, that the anatomy side of things is not included in any of our degrees. You know, well, certainly it hasn't been in anything I've done. And I was thinking about how useful it would have been to do that, because, of course, some singing teachers teach in a way that's very much centered around anatomy, and they'll give you, you know, they'll show you the diagrams and talk about things consistently. And yet others, you don't hear a word from them about it. And I think it's a really hard fine line about where to meet that in the middle. I think having knowledge of it is a great thing, of course, like anything. It's like having knowledge about anything is a great thing, but then it's how you apply it and what you do with it. And one of the things that I think most people would agree on is that a common trait amongst singers is that we get in our own heads too much and we overthink things. And, you know, it's a big thing. And I see it as a teacher and as a singer myself. The people who are just so filled with all the information, like you're saying, like yourself, getting in your own head because you know so much. There was this pretense about talking about how singers were better when they were stupid. But I often think I've got friends who are really knowledgeable. Obviously, they're not as knowledgeable as you would be as a speech pathologist, but they've had a huge teaching base and they know all these kinds of things, but they get in their heads so much. And I think there's a really fine line between knowing things and then just letting that go, and how we do that is really, really tricky. But I've always wondered why they don't teach it at undergraduate level.
They definitely should. I mean, I think, you know, I always say to my students, because I still teach singing, you wouldn't pick up a trumpet or a saxophone without knowing, well, this is the mouthpiece and these are the valves and this is how the sound is produced. So I think basic anatomy and physiology of how the vocal cords work is paramount. I think every singer should know that. And, you know, I don't like dissing singers, but there was some stuff on Instagram recently.
Oh, yes.
Yes. With a very well-known singer who's in the limelight at the moment and explaining how the voice works. And it was completely wrong. I don't know if I should mention her name, but it was completely wrong. And the thing that concerns me about that is, one, she's an amazing singer. How does she not even know how her voice works? And 2, she is somebody that a lot of young singers are looking up to, and
Very much.
she's really spreading that misinformation. So it's quite dangerous. I shared that to say, don't do what this person's saying. So
yeah, I saw so many people, saying similar to you, like what she's saying is completely wrong. And then other people being like, oh, you're just jealous. It's like, no, wait a second.
no, there's facts.
We're not jealous.
There's facts and there's opinion.
Just don't open your mouth if you don't know.
So I didn't see this. So what did she say?
Can we say who it is?
You can, but I'll bleep it out. It's fine.
Well, I can say if you're going to bleep it out.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Absolutely amazing voice, amazing singer, but completely wrong with her description of how the voice works. So I do think that it's really important as a singer that you have some basic understanding of how your vocal cords work, especially when it comes to vocal health, because how can you apply understanding of vocal health and understand when someone says to you, well, you need to do this or you don't need to do that, if you really have no idea how they work, where they are.
But what did she say?
There was a lot that she said that
There was
wrong.
a lot.
She was talking about how the vocal cords work, and she was talking, and then she's like,
how that creates a space, and that's how they work. And yeah, and it was just all very wrong. And talking about when you drink things that it goes on your vocal cords. I mean, we have to remember the primary function of the vocal cords is to protect the airway. The secondary function of the vocal cords is for communication. So, this is a common myth that when we're drinking water, it's going on our vocal cords. No. If it's going on your vocal cords, you're coughing. And if your cough reflex is not there, then you're on your way to aspiration pneumonia and to out of this world. Then that's what I've been doing all day today at the hospital that I work at, is seeing people for swallowing disorders, and we don't want anything going near the vocal cords.
Is that, you said that's a common vocal myth. What are some of the others that keep coming up?
One that I get all the time. I did a study with a wonderful speech pathologist who actually got an Order of Australia this year, Cecilia Pemberton. And we did a presentation and workshop together in 2016. And it was on what singers take for their voices. Because, of course, and I've been in this position many times, every singer needs a quick fix. We're all looking for that quick fix. It's nothing worse than when you've got a big performance coming up and you get sick and you lose voice. So, everyone's always trying to find something to help that. And there seems to be this misconception that if something's natural, that it's good for you. And I am certainly, this is my disclaimer, I'm not against natural medicines. And I'm not big pharma or anything like that. But Cecilia and I did a survey where we asked singers what they take when they're unwell.
Mm-hmm.
And it was quite alarming how many witches' brews, were reported. So people just mixing lots of herbal things together without fully understanding the effects that some of them can have on the voice. And I think because it's not really regulated, a lot of people don't know where to get the information to find out.
Mm-hmm.
Ginseng can increase the risk of bleeding on the vocal cord. Any of these things in moderation can be okay, but things shouldn't be mixed together. And so I think that was something that's really scary, that there's just not enough research and understanding about natural products and what should be mixed and what shouldn't be mixed. I think it's banned now, but at one point there were singers reporting they were drinking colloidal silver.
Oh my God.
I mean, that's just terrifying.
Oh my goodness.
So let's just put silver into our system. But and I think the thing that was also scary about that study was, and I never actually published it or anything because I had a baby, but just where singers are getting their vocal health information from. And I think one of my pet hates as a voice therapist is seeing singers who are professional or amateur, but mostly professional, asking on Facebook for vocal health advice. Oh, I've got a cold. What should I do? There might be people who give good advice, but you're getting a random cohort of people, and how do you know what's the good advice and what's the bad advice?
I'm sure that there are a million ways that you could answer this, but if a singer came to you and said, I don't have laryngitis, but I'm on the way there, like I can feel my voice is feeling a bit hoarse, maybe it's a bit of fatigue, maybe it's a bit of an infection, and I've got a performance next weekend, what would be your advice on it? Do you have a little package of advice that you could give them, or is it just too variable?
Well, I mean, of course, it depends on the symptoms, but generally voice rest, increase your water intake, do some steam inhalations, or some people, the jury's out on that one. Some people prefer steam inhalations. Other people like using the nebulizers. The particles are smaller, so there is evidence to say that it reaches the vocal cords better. So that can help. But semi-occluded vocal tract exercises also really good. There's a lot of evidence to say that doing trills and straw exercises are almost as beneficial as voice rest, depending on the situation.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So you kind of got to think, I always say to my patients, think of your vocal cords like your ankle. Say you'd sprained your ankle. What would you do? You wouldn't go and run a marathon on it.
Well, I never would in the first place. So I think we're fine. I think we established that I like to row, a little bit of boxing, but you're never going to get me doing a marathon.
Yeah, I tried that once. Didn't end well. The marathon had finished by the time I got even close to ending. Everyone had gone home and I was like jogging up the back. But, I did it. I was still proud. But yeah, you're right, Sam. Exactly that. Yeah.
So you mentioned being at the hospital earlier. So you have a separate clinic?
So In Good Voice is my business. I run that 4 days a week.
Okay.
And I teach singing there.
Okay.
I do voice therapy, and I also go to schools and do voice care workshops for teachers because we see a lot of voice problems in teachers. And I work at the hospital just because sometimes working in private practice, it gets a bit lonely.
Yeah.
And voice therapy can be very same. You're kind of doing the same thing with each patient, so it gets a bit monotonous. So I took a casual job at Knox Private Hospital, and when I'm there, I just really enjoy being in an acute setting. So I've worked a lot in acute hospitals over the years. And again, Debbie Filand kind of gave me that advice as a very young speech pathologist. She said, if you want to do well in voice, try and get as much neuro under your belt as you can. So this is working with people who've had strokes, understanding how the brain works and how it affects the voice and all the innovation to the vocal cords and everything. The vocal cords and the voice is a small part of the whole cranial system. So I'd had quite a bit of a break from working in hospitals. So a casual position became available and I thought, no, it'll be good for me to get those skills up again and actually feel like I'm part of a team. And it means you've got access to health professionals. And funnily enough, the doctors have gotten to know me, and a couple of the respiratory specialists refer patients to me because there's a whole another area now. We see the people post-COVID, who have upper airway disorders. We learnt so much more about chronic cough and vocal cord dysfunctions, upper airway disorders, which is a whole other area, but obviously it affects the voice.
Well, that's what I was going to ask actually post-COVID, having been through quite a bit myself. Is there anything that's kind of coming out of the work post-COVID that seems to be a trend of things that are happening in relation to the voice?
Well, that was another study I did with Dr. Veronica Stewart, and we are going to publish that at some point. We did it quite soon after COVID. It was just, we did a interview, surveyed singers to see what was happening. Obviously, things are settling down a bit now. We're not seeing as much, but people who were getting COVID were getting a very bad cough. And those coughs were lasting for quite a long time. And as we know, coughing is one of the most damaging things for the vocal cords. So trying to really work on chronic cough, like chronic cough is huge, because if someone can't stop coughing, then obviously they're going to get swelling of the vocal cords, and it does affect their vocal production. So as I said, things are settling down a little bit. From my perspective, I'm not seeing as many people post-COVID. We still see people with long COVID, but I do think we have more understanding now, and the respiratory specialists now have a better understanding that not everything is asthma, that sometimes vocal cord dysfunction is there, and giving someone asthma medications isn't necessarily going to help that. So there was a quite a well-known story here. One of the footballers, I can't even remember what team he played for, it was a few years ago now, he couldn't get through a quarter of football. He was just out of breath. He thought he was suffering from asthma. He was trying all the asthma medications. He was actually thinking he was going to have to give up his football career. And he was diagnosed with vocal cord dysfunction. So Do you know what vocal cord dysfunction is?
I definitely do, but for the people at home, why don't you tell them?
So vocal cord dysfunction, when we breathe in, the vocal cords move apart. And when we speak or we sing, air comes through the vocal cords and sets them into motion, vibrating. What happens with vocal cord dysfunction is they get out of sync for whatever reason.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so often when people breathe in, the vocal cords will come together. So they actually feel like they can't get any air into their lungs.
Mm.
All right.
And it can be brought on or exacerbated by exercise. So paradoxical vocal cord movement is quite common with athletes that are, exerting a lot of air in and out. Vocal cords get out of sync, so hence this footballer. So the way to treat that is to get the vocal cords back into sync. So getting them opening on the breath in, not closing on the breath in. So we do lots of work with straws, breathing exercises, and this particular football player was able to get back out on the footy field and go back to playing full games.
When you say about the straw, can you explain that for people who may not be familiar with that technique?
Yeah, so we use a lot of straws now for a lot of therapy, because when you breathe in through a straw, it actually creates the vocal cords to abduct or move apart. So if you even just breathe in through pursed lips,
mm-hmm.
if you try that now, you can feel that you can get more air in.
Mm-hmm.
Same as if you breathe in through your nose, I guess, because often we'll say with chronic cough, doing a quick sniff sets the vocal cords apart.
Mm-hmm.
So we use straws to breathe in and out to help that. But one of the very, very popular exercises that everybody's doing now is the semi-occluded vocal tract exercises, or straw work, where you're blowing through a straw into water, because it creates backed pressure. So the pressure coming from beneath the vocal cords, which sets them into motion, you've got the pressure that's can't escape coming back, and then that meets the pressure that's coming up and it regulates the vocal cords. That's probably the best way to explain it. It's quite complicated and scientific.
I love doing the straw exercise with the water, also because it helps visually too. It helps being able to see, because as singers we can't often see, so having the water and everything helps. And I also love putting a straw above water and singing in and creating the ripples and looking at the different vibrations and things. Especially for singers who I work with who are overproducing air and things like that, just getting them to take that back down and to visually see it, because as singers, of course, one of the things is it's a lot of it's left to our imagination or our understanding rather than
the bubbles can be really good. And a really good exercise I like to do is just blowing air and then adding the voice, and then seeing if the bubbles get bigger when they add the voice, which shows if they're pushing too much air when they're vocalizing. So, straw exercises are great for everything. They help to reduce swelling. They help to reduce bad habits. They get the vocal cords regulated and vibrating in an unforced way.
I have a question for you that someone asked me the other day, actually, in regards to straw techniques. So maybe you can answer this for me. When people talk about straw work for singers just go and they get a straw and they do it. But does the size of the straw matter and why?
So the size of the straw matters because obviously a thinner tube is going to create more backed pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes you want to start with the wider straw
mm-hmm.
and then gradually increase to a smaller straw. But there's this thing called the voice trainer at the moment. It's like a little plastic thing that you can buy online, and you can actually adjust the size of the the diameter of it. And they're very expensive for a little plastic thing that you wear around your
course.
neck. But people are finding it quite useful. I like to buy these things and try them myself just to see if I can recommend them. And it's been quite good. Of course, there are things on the market. If they've got a brand name on them, then the price goes up. You can just go and get your average straw from Woolworths. They have the paper ones that are a bit wider, but there's also a right way and a wrong way of doing these exercises. And I think it's really important that people know how to do them correctly, because you should never feel any tension or tightness in the laryngeal area. And you want to try and keep your cheeks as, loose and puffed up. They should kind of vibrate a little bit. If you look at lax vox, that's a type of straw exercises that you can find online, and they use a very big tube and blowing the bubbles and really relaxing the cheeks to get everything relaxed.
When you say you can find the exercises online, earlier you said there's a lot of misinformation as well online about things. So what would be a site that you'd recommend that is actually helpful for singers to access with truths rather than myths? Because I've seen lots of very interesting YouTube clips related to all of this.
There's quite a few, but I actually like Tom Burke. He is a speech pathologist from America. And he's also trained in a still, but he's got some videos called Straws Will Save Your Life and Straw Sequence, and I use his videos quite a bit to demonstrate to my students. There's also one called The Science Behind the Straw, which is a really great demonstration of exactly how the semi-occluded vocal tract exercises work. But so there's a few. I mean, I guess singers are quite aware of their voices, and I think you just have to be aware that self-awareness is so important. When you're doing the exercises, if anything doesn't feel right and it's hurting, then obviously you're doing it wrong. So if it feels nice, then you're doing it right.
And this is why I don't do marathons. That's exactly it, right there.
I talked to my dad. He's run 33 of them.
That's too many. That's too many marathons. He should stop.
I say to singers all the time who come to see me, and I have quite a few professionals who come to see me just casually. I have to say I absolutely love that moment when a singer just looks at me and goes, "Oh my God, it's so much easier now." Everything put together is hard. Like computing everything is hard, but the actual physical experience
it's meant to feel nice
of singing should feel liberating and free. It's just everything else that you have to think about. But when you get it right, I remember someone saying to me, "Oh, what's your best advice?" Because a colleague looked at me in rehearsals. He's like, "You don't look like you're doing a hell of a lot." And I said, "Well, that's because I've done all the prep work before I got here and all the muscle memory and everything's there. So I don't."
That's our job though, right? To make it look easy.
Exactly. No, exactly that. I don't know whether this is relevant, and you might say that's a stupid question, but do you get, apart from the physiological stuff with speech pathology, do you get many clients who it ends up being more of an emotional deep emotional thing? And if so, how do you deal with that? Because as a speech pathologist, do you just deal with the technical side of things, or do you actually have to know how to, I mean, I would assume a music therapist is a different job altogether, but I'm assuming that kind of comes hand in hand because let's face it, unlike instrumentalists, there's a lot of very personal internal stuff that can affect our chords and our stress and our emotion and that. So do you find that happens frequently too?
We see emotional voice disorders more than you would think. And, and when I'm doing my case history with patients, that's a very big question that we will ask, like, did anything traumatic occur at the time when your voice disorder started? And the analogy I always give is when you go to a movie and there's a sad part, where do you feel that? Straight away it goes to your larynx, right? You get that lump in your throat. So if someone is going through something, it's going to most likely affect their voice. As speech pathologists, it's our job. We do counsel. Singing teachers counsel a lot, don't they say? As a singing teacher, 80% is counselling, 20% is teaching singing. But I think, recognising that, and I have had patients who have had that moment when I've asked that question and they've just burst into tears because they've realised, that was when my mum passed away, or that was when, I had a car accident, or, there's that correlation between when they lost their voice and something traumatic that did happen in their life. Sometimes just realising that can help. And then sometimes they really need to work through it. They'll be holding it here and they'll be talking and carrying it in their throat. So often we work closely with the psychologists. We need to know where our limit is. And I've had to sometimes say to patients, look, I'm not a psychologist. I can help you with some exercises, some tension release, some straws, going to see a laryngeal physiotherapist to help release that tension. But the reality is if they're walking around carrying all that underlying stress, they need to deal with that before the voice is actually going to improve. The hardest ones are the ones that are experiencing the symptoms but there's no reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
And it's psychological. And you can't say to them, well, it's all in your head, because the symptoms for them are very real.
Yeah.
Is there a really good go-to exercise that you have I know there's probably a lot of them, but if you had to pick your favorite tension release exercise as far as a vocal exercise for singers, what would it be?
I mean, yawn sigh is always good. So a really big yawn and then
Mm-hmm.
making sure that the sigh is very
Carries
releasing.
through. Yep.
Yeah. So you don't want you want it to be very
Adam, can you do that as well?
I could, but I won't. It's like a marathon.
Because obviously when we yawn, everything lifts, the larynx drops, everything stretches. The problem is if someone's got something deep-seated going on, that's only going to fix it for a few minutes. So
no, of course. What about an actual voiced, like pitched voiced exercise? Anything you'd recommend?
It's probably just trills.
Lip trills. Mm-hmm.
Even just holding it on one pitch. We don't have to be doing fancy things like just holding it on one pitch. Again, very similar to the semi-occluded vocal tract exercises. It's regulating the vibration without the tension and managing that air.
Sorry, I'm laughing, which you guys can see, but obviously our listeners can't see. I'm laughing because I have a problem.
We know.
The problem is, so Sam was just talking, listeners, about lip trills where you put your lips together and you vibrate, fine. But then you have the one which a lot of singers do where they put their tongue onto the lips. And
I can't do that one either.
I don't understand why I can't do it, and everyone picks on me, and I try so hard. And then someone said to me recently, oh, well, you can't do it because you've got deep root tongue tension. And I said, that's bullshit. If I had deep root tongue tension, I wouldn't sing the way I can sing. Like, I'd hear it in my singing if I had deep root tongue tension. But I don't understand why I can't do it. I was going to ask you, but if you can't do it either, then.
Look, some people can't trill. Some people, I actually could not do that. And I will never forget Marie Claire
At Opera Australia.
The Italian coach at Opera Australia scared me so much that I did it.
So fear is the answer.
Fear is the answer. But I have some people who can't do they can't do like I'm not just good at either of them. And it can be because of tongue tension, but can also just be anatomical as well.
Okay, so I'm okay then. I'm not going to end my career right now. And I can't do I can't do the French, the guttural. I think my everything's scared at the back of my throat.
Got to have a floppy palate for that.
Yeah. Oh, well, I guess you're right. I guess we can. There are some things that we, some of us just can't do.
A lot of people have trouble with and we often recommend just kind of pinching the cheeks
forward.
Yeah, or lifting.
Yeah. Or lifting them. Okay.
But of course, you've got to have good airflow because it's not going to work if you don't have any air.
And understanding that airflow is huge and how it works in different pitches and all that kind of thing, which is, I talk about that all the time to people that I work with.
Whole lectures on breath. But, I just say to people, it's like the air is the electricity for the voice. If you don't have any air, it won't work. If you think of a balloon, you blow up a balloon and then you squeeze the top, and you don't let any air out, you're not going to get a sound. If you let air out, the edges vibrate exactly like the vocal cords and you get a sound. And if you let too much out,
that's it. Off it goes.
And speaking of lectures, you've got a presentation coming up at the next ANATS conference, is that right? Do you want to tell us a bit about that presentation, what your topic is?
Yes. So I'm just in the process of collecting the data. I've had many people answer to my survey, which has been wonderful. So thank you to all the singers out there who have completed it.
I did too.
I mean, at the moment, I'm just looking at Australian singers and I'm hoping my plan, this is me putting it out there. My plan is to do my master's in research in the next couple of years and then my PhD and become that doctor that I said I wanted to be.
Fantastic.
But without the blood. So one of the interesting things that I've been very passionate about in the last few years is seeing how many singers are turning to corticosteroids for vocal fold inflammation, whether it be illness or overuse or misuse. I mean, poor music theatre singers, they're often doing 8 shows a week back to back. There's a lot of pressure on them, and in this industry, I think this is why I have a good understanding of singers, because being a singer and having worked professionally, I get that pressure of having to get on stage.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we're replaceable, right?
Mhm.
If you don't get on stage, there's someone waiting to step in, and God forbid they could get your job. So it's very, very important that, show must go on. But unfortunately for that, singers often push themselves into situations that are not vocally healthy to try and get through an illness or get through a performance. So I've just noticed in the last few years just more singers kind of contacting me saying, oh, I've got a cold or I've got a performance tomorrow night and I've got some steroids. Should I take them? And my advice, as my disclaimer, is always, if you haven't seen a laryngologist and they have looked at your vocal cords to check that you don't have any kind of bleed on your vocal cords, you probably shouldn't be taking the oral steroids because they can increase the risk of vocal cord hemorrhage. They also have really nasty side effects, like they keep you awake all night, they can bring on illness faster, they increase reflux, they can make you feel very unstable, they can give you a dry mouth. So with Dr. Debbie Fireland, we are doing a small little research project. We're going to be presenting at the ANATS conference. So for those of you who don't know who ANATS is, it's Australian National Association of Teachers of Singing. Wonderful organisation. I love working with ANATS. So we will be presenting those results, and then I'll be turning that into a research paper, and hopefully then I'll get into my master's in research once I'm published, and we'll continue this topic. So I'm kind of just dipping my toe in the water to see if it's got any validity. And
I think it's definitely a hot topic amongst singers, and especially in the day and age that we live in, where singers, as you say, music theatre singers especially, are working, so hard. But even so, opera singers at the top of their game now. A lot of my friends and colleagues who are contract to contract, back to back, vocal rest is great, but when you're spending your time off having to then learn your next role, a lot of the time that's really difficult. So I spend my time, I'm fortunate, I tend to kind of map stuff out a little bit better so that I'm not crazy back to back. But I had the situation where I was in Scotland recently, throwing up everywhere, and
that's good for the vocal cords, isn't it?
Oh my God. But it was, I've never been so sick. And then I recovered, and I had about a week in between being sick and going up to Scotland. And then after a couple of days of rehearsals, my voice just went. And it was really weird because I've had laryngitis before and I've had these things before. And it didn't feel like that at all. It just really, literally the next day I woke up and I was like what is going on here? I went to see, thankfully Scottish Opera had an ENT that I could go to see. I went to the hospital. They did the scope and everything. We had a look, and the guy said to me, look, it's very obvious that even though everything's doing okay now, that there's been burning through the acids and everything. And that's, something that I hadn't really considered. Obviously, I know that, like as a singer, I'm aware of that, but it's not something that I've suffered from previously. So that was really scary for me, I've got to say. But I did do the right thing and go and pay the money and go and seek out a professional to get that sorted out and to have a look at it too. And he said you can see where it's been burning. Thankfully, it didn't do any long-term damage, but he did give me steroids.
But that's the right way to do it. You did it the right way. You actually had the scope. But, as I'm seeing on some of my responses, people don't have access to that, or they can't afford it, or they don't have time.
But who allocates them steroids if they've not had a scope?
GPs. So this is the thing. They're going to the GP and, I've taken them myself. So, and I can say that I don't particularly like how I feel when I've taken them. I feel that my voice feels shaky and I can't control it. But like the last time I went to the doctor and said, I've got a performance coming up and can I have some prednisolone? He gave me a jar with 20 tablets and said, we'll take them for 3 days. So I think what we're seeing now is GPs are like, once upon a time when you took them, they'd give you the 3 tablets that you needed to take. But now they're giving you a lot. So I asked in my survey, did you already have some or did the GP give them? And a lot of people are saying, they already had some. But the problem is they're sharing them. People are sharing them backstage with their colleagues. And that's what's kind of the scary thing is some people like the way that their voice feels when they're on steroids, so they keep taking them. And I know it has been a problem.
Wow.
I did read some articles that it was a bit of a problem. I don't know right now, but it was a problem a little while ago on Broadway where people were just relying on steroids all the time to get through their performances. So, and I think sometimes singers are just so desperate to kind of get on stage and get through that performance that they're not really thinking about the long-term risks. I mean, taking steroids long-term can have...
No, absolutely. He said to me, I'm going to give you these. And he said, but you are on the, you're on the happy return back now. And I said, well, I don't want to take them unless I have to. And I remember his advice to me was, if you've got a couple of days before the performance, really you need to take them gradually over the couple of days. You can't just have a quick fix and hope for the best. He said, but...
Yeah, you shouldn't just take one.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's important for singers to remember as well. Depending on what the issue is, you have to get that advice. And it usually is a couple of days if you've got that couple of days. And it was the first time, I'm really very fortunate. It was the first time in my career that this has happened, and I feel very blessed, that I'm in that situation. And it's also the first time I've been to an ENT and seen my vocal cords. I was very upset because of what was going on, but I was also so excited to see my little cords. I was like, hi guys, thanks for all your years of service.
I often recommend that singers get a baseline when they're not unwell because like I know for myself, one of my arytenoids crosses the midline and that's normal for me. But if I only saw that when I had lost my voice or was having a problem, I might think, oh my gosh, that's the problem. So I think it's really great for singers to get that baseline so that you know what your vocal cords look like when you're well. So you've got that comparison. I've heard of stories where there have been singers who have had a polyp on their vocal cords, that it's not affecting them. They're able to sing through it, but they went and had a baseline done. And it's like, oh, I've got a polyp, but it's not affecting me. But if they had have gone and actually...
When they're not well.
Seen that when they're not well, they would have gone, oh my God, I need to get it removed. Or,
right.
You know what I mean? So
yeah, that's amazing advice. Yeah.
If people can afford it and you've got the time, go and get that baseline so you know your voice. I mean, singers really know their voices. The teachers are the problems. They're the ones that we do a lot of voice therapy with because they don't have that knowledge of their voice and they push through illnesses and viruses, in classrooms and open plan classrooms, and they're constantly having to use their voices and they don't know how to support and breathe and they're often the ones who end up with the muscle tension dysphonias and the voice problems and I have sadly had teachers who have had to give up their career and do something else because it's just too far gone.
I worked with a woman who came to me for voice lessons and she was a teacher and exactly what she came to me and she's like, oh, I just seem to get vocal fatigue and I'd like to have some singing lessons to strengthen my singing. And when she came to me, I said, oh, your problems are far worse than strengthening. You've already got issues. I'd love you to go see someone. And she refused. She said, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. And I said, well, I'm not going to teach you because I'm not going to teach you because you've got vocal trouble, you've got vocal health trouble and you need to go and seek a professional because I can't help you until that is sorted out. Good and then advice. I can help you build it back up, but I can't work with something that's broken.
Yeah, and this is why I like going out to schools, and a lot of schools are really on board with it, with going out and doing vocal health workshops for teachers for prevention.
Oh, that's so good. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it has actually improved since COVID because I think pre-COVID teachers just used to go to school sick all the time and because they don't have leave. Maybe we're getting a bit back to old times, but since COVID, teachers generally are not meant to go to school if they're unwell. People are a bit more aware of that now, but anyone who's really a professional voice user and, one of the questions I ask in my assessment is, let's have a look at a standard week and how much you use your voice. And that's when they realise that, they're full-time teachers and then they go home and they look after the kids and they might go and cheer them on the weekend playing sport or they go to the football like I used to do and cheer. They might have a sick mother and they're talking to her on the phone for 2 hours a night. And if you had been on your feet all day and your legs were tired, you would go home and you would sit on your butt and put your feet up. But we don't turn our voices off and give them a rest. Their muscles They need rest.
And that's really, really good advice. I like that. It's much better than that marathon advice you gave before. And with that very good advice, we might wrap it up there. But Sam, we like to finish our episodes with fantastic guests with 5 rapid fire questions. Are you open to taking the 5 rapid fire question quiz from us?
Sure. I'm brave. Let's give it a go.
Sam U'Ren, can you juggle?
Only 2 balls.
It's very specific. Have you ever busked before?
Yes. I used to do that when I was 16 years old. Croydon Main Street. I used to make a squillion.
Yes.
I don't know if they were paying me to shut up.
I think every performer should busk at least once in your life, just if for no other reason to know how to connect with an audience. I love busking. This is brilliant. I'm really glad because we haven't had a whole lot of buskers on, so I'm delighted.
Yep. Mostly at Christmas. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I love it. If you weren't a performer or a speech pathologist, what job would you love to do?
It's 2. I would have loved to have been a laryngologist, but it's too late for that now, or a midwife.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay. Pushing different things out of different areas. If you could perform a duet with anyone in the world, apart from me, obviously, because you've already done that, living or dead, who would it be?
Oh, Julie Andrews, except she can't sing anymore. So
in her prime. In her
prime. Oh, my gosh. I have to tell this story if we've got time.
Yes.
I met Julie Andrews.
Do tell.
No.
Yes, I did. This is an amazing story and I'd love to finish on it. So when I was living in Sydney and my husband Mal was in the army band and she was in Sydney doing My Fair Lady, and Mal got invited to an event at Government House. And when I found out that she was going to be the guest artist there or the speaker, I was so jealous. I'm like, you're going to get to meet my idol, the person that I've idolized all my life. And I wrote something on Facebook about how sad I was that my husband was going to meet my idol. And his boss managed to get 2 tickets so that I could go.
Awesome.
Wow.
Now, I was about 9 months pregnant, about to pop any day. And so I went to this event. She saw my pregnant belly and she turned around and she said to me, "My goodness, when are you due?" And I said, "Any moment. Wouldn't that be a funny story?" And she said, "What are you having?" And I said, "I'm having a girl and her name's Charlotte." She put her hand on my pregnant belly and said, "May baby Charlotte be blessed with the gift of music."
Aww.
And we called Charlotte Julia Rose.
Oh, wow.
That's so sweet.
Fantastic.
And you'll be pleased to hear, Helena, that Charlotte sings in the Australian Girls Choir.
There you go.
Yay.
So it's all come true. I love that.
Okay, we're going to finish with one final question, which is, if you had to enter every single room for the rest of your life with a personal theme song, what would that theme song be?
Probably the Essendon theme song.
Well, if you can't scream anymore, then you can at least have the theme song.
I did have to sing it at an Essendon Football Club event, opera style, which some of the players thought was very, very funny. So
They'd love that. And this is just a little bonus question, Sam, because if you listen to any of the first episode, you will know why I'm asking this. Do you eat pizza with a knife and fork?
Okay, I laughed when I heard that story. My dad used to make me eat pizza with a knife and fork when I was a kid.
What? No, this is a
So,
disaster.
Do you do it now?
Sometimes I do because I don't like getting greasy fingers.
Yes.
So,
Ah,
Yes.
So I sometimes do. It depends where I am and what kind of pizza I'm eating and how sloppy it
Exactly.
is. But yeah, I don't see an issue with eating pizza with a knife and
Thank
fork.
you.
I'm with you,
okay.
Helena.
We have to wrap this episode up right there. We might this final question may never make it into the edit. I'm telling you right now. Sam, thank you so much for coming on the episode. It's been a delight having you and super informative. We've learnt so much.
absolutely.
So really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful talking with you both and seeing you both. I haven't seen you for so long, and I'm really honoured that I could come on and chat with you today.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.